Hello everyone and welcome back. Today in the workshop we have the large trident maple. It's getting to the time in the season where it's almost too late to start doing these techniques to these trees. This one, the buds are swelling in some areas and also just barely starting to push leaf growth in other areas. So if we don't get this done now, we're going to have to wait another season. So we're going to go ahead and get this done today. One thing I wanted to mention on this tree is I would like to, if I can, it's in one of the large 2 foot by 4 foot growing tubs. I would like to try to get this in a smaller growing tub this season. This is where I see the projected front of this tree, and it is the narrowest is where the front would be, which means in reality the longest of the smaller growing tubs would position the front of the tree like we orientate them in the rest. What we're going to do today is basically the initial styling to this tree. It was taken out of the ground and there were some large chops made all over the tree, and you can see where there was a tapered cut made here to try to get a leader to grow at the very top here, which did not happen. We do have some nice, there's a really large cut here as you can see as well. It does have some callousing on it, so we're going to continue promoting that callousing on the front here. The new apex of this tree is actually right here. It's about 4 inches down from where the initial cut was made, so we're going to have to utilize that as our new apex, and we're going to have to carve accordingly. About 90% of the branches that you see on this tree are going to be gone after we get done doing what we're doing, because it's at a stage where the sap is starting to flow and it's starting to push bud growth. I'm hoping we can get some back budding in some specific and strategic areas on the tree. If not, there are going to be some smaller branches that we are going to retain in certain areas of the tree that will give us what we're after as far as our primary branches, let's just say. That's about all we're going to have left on this tree is our primary branches and our apex, which we're going to let grow freely by the end of this project today. We do have a what could be considered a twin trunk back here. It's more like a clump of branches, so we're actually going to cut the root back and remove this section of the root. I think it's just going to give us a better tree in the long run. The root's really narrow right here, so we can do an angled cut. It'll callus over in about a year's time, and I think we'll be doing really well to remove that portion. We do have this large knob in the back that we're going to have to do some pretty extreme carving on as well to get that back in check and bring it back in line with the design of the tree. Right now is the time to be doing this type of stuff to the tree when it's in its infancy stages of designing and styling. That way you get that stuff out of the way now. We know the tree's alive, we know it's not going to die from being collected, so you do all your major work right after the roots get reestablished in the container. That way it has from now till it gets into its final bonsai pot to heal those calluses, as well as while this tree's putting on apical growth and all these main branches. There's going to be a lot of energy flowing through this trunk, which is going to allow those calluses to close up faster. So you do this stuff now, so when the tree's at its maximum growth and it's pumping as much energy as it can through the tree and that callousing's at its maximum capacity, it's already been done. So you don't go back later when the tree's starting to slow down when you're working on ramification. So let's go ahead and get started with this tree. Bear with me a second, I'm going to grab some tools. Or should I say a tool. You can see the previous owner of this tree had some sacrificial branches down here to help promote this callousing. We're going to remove those because, to be quite honest, if they get any larger, they're going to be unsightly bulges here on the tree, and we do not want that for the tree. We want healing, and we're going to get that from the rush of energy that's going to be coming up through this tree for the apical growth. Down here there's some sacrificial branches that not really sacrificial branches, I guess you could say they just sprouted up off the root from back budding from being collected. I'm going to go ahead and remove those now as well because they're not going to be part of the final design of the tree. We're just going to go through here, like this branch for instance, it's not doing us any benefit. It's in a decent place on the tree, but it's growing straight upward, and that's not what we're after for the final design of the tree. This portion of this branch is dead, so let's go ahead and get rid of that as well. Now, we have this knob right here, okay? If you look at the tree in the overall design of where I'm anticipating this being the top branch, we have a smaller branch up here We have a branch right here that's just, it's sprouted out and it's growing forward, which is not going to do us any benefit. Now let's focus on this portion of the tree here. This little teeny branch that we're looking at here is probably going to be one of the main branches that I keep. I don't necessarily need one down here if that's the case. I do want to look at it where it's at in position as far as scale of this tree. And we have some smaller, lower branches over here that are down from this branch that are almost directly across from where this knob is. That would give us that T-bar situation that we're not after. You want to avoid that if at all possible. So that's why I'm going to choose this smaller branch here. Now what this is going to do is it's going to grow like a mad because it's going to be one of the only branches on this tree, and it's going to thicken up fairly quick, which is going to in turn generate that energy coming up through the tree. So we're going to reduce this knob into a wound today. Let's continue on here. We're going to remove everything we know we're not going to use. This large upper branch here, not necessary. This is actually the apex of the tree. This is in completely wrong area for anything to be, so it's got to go. When I'm removing these large branches like this, I always do it in 2 cuts. I'll do the halfway through and then the rest of the way through. And I'm going to do it up above where I anticipate this being terminated initially. That way I can come back after the weight of that branch is off and come through in here and do my secondary cut to where I'm going to keep it for its final design. And I just come through here like this and whittle away at it, taking a series of cuts. That way I can have control over it. Now we'll have to hit that with the grinder just a little bit to bring it into shape for everything that we're going to do. Let's turn around to the rear of the tree here real quick and focus on the rear of the tree for a moment. All of this here, although it's good and it's sacrificial, with the size that it is now, it's not going to be good for what we're trying to accomplish for healing. So we're going to actually remove the majority of all of this, and possibly all of this is going to be removed off of here by the time we get finished today. I'm going to remove these larger ones first and foremost because we know we don't need those. Realistically, what I'm trying to accomplish with this tree is get all this excess unnecessary growth removed off of the tree. In my experience with these other trident maples I've been working with, I've noticed that it's not really necessary to have a sacrificial branch in the area that you're wanting to have wound healing. It's more so the energy flow of the tree that will create the ability for it to heal its wounds. So I feel that with as well along as this wound is, I mean, you can see it's got massive callousing here. Looks like something was removed up here last year possibly. Maybe it was another large branch. But you've got a massive amount of callousing right here and some up here at the top and around the top of this. If we continue just to scar around this and put our wound sealant on here and again allow this upward growth just to grow crazily for the next few years, this will continue to heal without any sacrificial branches in the area. And this one here's already developed a knob, which is not what we want on the final design of a tree. So this stuff's got to go. And again, you want to time this stuff just right. Like I said, right now, I mean, I'm not too far along in the season to be doing this kind of work, but if I didn't do it this weekend, it would be too late by next weekend. I mean, that's how close we are. This thing would be completely leafed out by next week. So now would be the time to get this stuff done. Let's take a look here now. There's an upward growing branch here, and there's a section right here that's completely dead. Of course, we got to eliminate the dead. Typically don't see dead wood on a trident maple, so we need to eliminate that. These are these 3 branches that I was talking about keeping on this side of the tree. Let's remove what we know we're not going to use, which is this upward growing branch here. And I'm going to continue to whittle away at this dead. I've got to straighten straighten out my tool here real quick. I got a little crazy and carried away and it bent it. I'm going to need to put it on the vise here real quick and straighten it back out so we can continue cutting this. So we'll be back in a few seconds. Just got to make a little minor tweak to my concave cutter here. I got into that dead wood, and that dead wood's a lot harder than the live wood, and it just tweaked it just barely a little bit. So we'll be back in 1 second. Stay with us. Okay, we're back. Like I said, sometimes you can get carried away with these type of tools. I'm moving at a fast pace because I've kind of got limited time to get all this done, and I know I've got a lot I need to get done today with this tree, and I'm trying to rush a little bit. You don't really want to rush while you're doing this stuff, but due to my time constraints and the things I've got going on in my life, I really sometimes don't have a choice. But in reality, if I would have just slowed down and taken my time, I wouldn't have had to waste that time straightening out this branch cutter. So we're back at it. These can be straightened back out. You got to be really careful about how you do it. Typically what will happen is you'll grab onto too large of a branch and you'll squeeze, and it'll move the cutting heads out of alignment. What you want to do is open them up, put them in a vise, and typically you're going to pull, if the point is facing away from you, you're going to pull towards you, which is going to bring that back down in line. The smaller ones, for whatever reason, they'll give you a little bit, but I think they're cast and they just snap, where these are, I think, forged. Forged ones you'll be able to manipulate a little bit. Cast ones will get to a certain point and they'll just break. So just kind of be mindful of that. We're going to continue working around this tree, and I'm just going to remove stuff and kind of talk at the same time, give you an idea what we're looking at, what we're doing. I am just going through this area here where this dead branch is and remove a bunch of stubs that are sticking out that are not necessary. I'm happy to see that there's live behind them. One thing that you can also do to tackle these dead branches like this are branch cutter or knob cutters. Knob cutters, these are 12-inch size, just like these are 12-inch size. As you can see, they're about the same. These, they focus all of the energy that you put into squeezing this into a area that's in line with the tool, okay? Where the knob cutters are sitting up like this, they're at an angle, so when you squeeze them, they can deform right or left. These will not. You can put a lot more power into these to get things done. And that's what we're going to do right now with this dead portion here. And we don't have to get way back inside here to get this dead out of here. It will get to a point, and then we're going to do some carving, like I said before, on this tree. So we'll open this area up a little bit, and then we'll get the rest of it with the carving tool, because I want to get to a point where this dead is back to some live veinage, so it will callus over eventually and be gone once it heals completely over. Okay. I think that's good for now. That's what we're dealing with now. I have a front branch here that I'm contemplating keeping, although I don't really think it's going to be good for the final design. It's a little bit lower than the rest of these branches. However, I don't necessarily think it's in the right spot. So we're going to have to visit that, kind of see what we want to do with that. Kind of cleaning up some of these knobs and some of these dead areas here with my knob cutter. This is the front of the tree, and I think that even if I was to move this kind of out of here, your eye is going to be lost in this line. I think over here is a better area to keep one of these branches. We've got this one over here as well that'll kind of help offset. So I think we're just going to go ahead and eliminate that one altogether. And again, just like any other tree, this is going to back bud to an extent. But also, in the same token, if we need branches somewhere, we're thread grafting them. We've successfully been able to do that on multiple trees now. I'm confident in my technique, and it's the exact same one I've shown you on these videos. And I've gotten maybe a 75% success rate. It's a thread graft, which is the easiest form of graft to do. It's the most successful form that I've found, due to you're using the existing tree to provide the branch. You're just putting it in a different area of the tree. So how much easier could it be as far as genetically matching? You're using the exact same tree to provide the branch that you're doing the graft on. So it's almost like you taking your arm and wanting it somewhere else and just putting it through your body and sticking it somewhere else. I mean, it's yours. Okay, in the back here, everything, let's see, let's not talk about the back just yet. Let's come over here to this side. All this upper growth up here is eliminated because realistically it's all going to be gone anyway. So let's just go ahead and get all that out of the way now, so we can talk about what we're going to do when we cut this apex down, because that's the real main dilemma that we have at the moment, is where are we chopping this apex back to, and how are we going to get a realistic taper out of it. This tree probably won't come back into the workshop for 3 years after we do this initial carving. This apex here is going to end up being 15-20 feet tall before it gets to any kind of realistic girth size for what this tree is going to be. And it'll end up having to get cut way back down and grown again and cut down and grown again, etc. But that's going to be a 2 or 3 year adventure. It's going to have to be done in some time with aggressive feeding, aggressive watering, putting it out in full sun, and just letting it take off. It's almost touching the ceiling now. Realistically, it's touching the ceiling right now. So with the understanding that we're just going to need to let it take off, kind of like the other trident maple, the nursery trident maple that we've done. In order to get a realistic taper, that thing's going to have to be 1.5 inches, 2 inches in diameter, and the only way you're going to get that is just to let it take off with growth. It'll get to a certain point where it starts to slow down. At that point in time, you chop it again, allow a new apex to go up again, which in turn is going to thicken what's existing there, and it's going to create even more taper as it goes up, which is the same thing we're going to end up doing with this as well. This here is competing, a competing apex. We don't need 2 apexes, we just need 1. So we're going to remove all distractions from this apex so it can just take off. Alright, we need to figure out what we're going to do for taper and where we're going to carve this to. So, the first order of business is to get your pin out and try to figure out where you're going to take this back to. Now, in my opinion, and you know what they say about opinions, I like to see a realistic taper between the apex and what's existing here. However, at the same time, you don't want to remove too much material, because all this growth, you don't want to eliminate all this growth, because that took a long time to get there. So my thought is kind of along the lines of what we have now already, of kind of taking it maybe back to these branches here as one option. Draw this in a little bit better so you can see what I'm talking about here. Get some paint flowing through here. Taking it back to these branches here and across, and do about the same thing on this side as well. Take it kind of back through here to these back branches. That's one option. Okay, does it look okay? Yes, it looks okay. Would it probably work? Probably. Is it exactly what I'm after? Not in the slightest. Here's what I'm thinking, and this is probably what I'm going to go with. I just wanted to show you another option that we have. I personally feel the best for this tree to be, we need to take this taper even back farther in the rear, so that creates a more realistic taper in the front, and it just helps the tree flow a little bit better. I mean, if you look at that there, it still kind of looks flat from the front where I'm looking at it. You can see here, it kind of still looks flat. I want it to be an actual taper, kind of like the small trident maple that we have. So my thought is take it back from where it is now, come clear down through here, and all the way down to these branches down below. And those will be our new back branches. Okay, this is kind of my thought about where we should kind of go with the design of this tree. It's going to be a little bit larger wound. It's going to take a little bit larger to heal. But I personally feel that creates a more dynamic tree. It creates a more realistic taper. It takes care of a wound that's in the back of the tree already right now. It's going to be eliminated. And like I said, we're going to allow this thing just to take off like gangbusters and grow its apex just as high and as far as it wants to go. So we can get something more realistic to this girth size. I mean, I'm looking for something maybe, you know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches in diameter here before we worry about cutting the top off. So like I said, 2 or 3 years is what we're looking at to get this apex going. And at the same time, these side branches are going to be growing out and up, and all the wounds are going to be healing. So we're kind of compounding what we're wanting to do here. So that's where I see this tree going style-wise, is down here like this for taper. So that's my opinion. I'm going to zoom in on this here real quick so you can see the two choices that we have, and I hope you'll agree that the line that I'm seeing as the best line for the tree is the line that goes a little bit farther down the trunk.